And that led me to apply for a Thomas J. Watson Fellowship, which essentially allows college students to go and pursue a passion project of their choice, a research project of their choice. And for me, again, I wanted to go and see how are other countries dealing with this global trend of rising incarceration rates. Because at that time, it was all the talk in the US. We were, again, Michelle Alexander at the forefront talking about the prison industrial complex. We had our growing Black Lives Matter movement. Also, simultaneously, we had our Occupy Wall Street movement that's talking about capitalist conditions, how that links to, the pipeline of largely Black and brown and indigenous folks being routed into criminal justice systems that's being given the green light by corporate politicians, as well as corporate forces who are partnering with these institutions to benefit from free labor, so that they have profits like Wayfair. You can have your furniture or your couch be created and not pay any cost in labor or wages. So I was like, somebody's got to do this better. So I went and traveled to Canada. I went to progressive countries that apparently had the answers. They were doing things right. They had lower incarceration rates. So I went to Canada. I went to Australia. I went to Dublin, Ireland. I went to South Africa. And every country I went to were not only listening to us in terms of, like, we had exported data practices, surveillance practices, scholarship of how to address criminal justice in respective countries. Other countries were looking at us and saying, oh, I think we should listen to them. So in countries that originally had smaller populations, they were now exploding. And largely the people who were being routed in their prisons, the demographics was pretty similar to ours. In Canada, it was the indigenous community that made up largely their incarceration population, along with individuals of the African diaspora, the West Indies, so Black and brown folks again. In Ireland, it was poor people and immigrants who were coming to Ireland looking for a better life. The same in Australia, you had indigenous and Maori folks who were being increasingly routed into the criminal justice system. South Africa, it was immigrants from neighboring countries who were going through civil war and economic distress that were fleeing their countries for better economic opportunities, being routed into prisons. And this is all being championed by, again, liberal politicians that are saying that public safety is at the forefront of their minds. And this is how we address also growing economic crises, because that was happening all across the countries I was traveling to. All of them were enacting austerity measures. They were cutting public programs and services. Australia at that time, they were having a prime minister who was essentially our Trump. And they were having these very racist and violent practices towards the immigrants that were coming into that country. And the way that they dealt with it was creating horrible detention centers, and again, routing existing colonized populations into their criminal justice system.